Director Amara Okonkwo stood at the window of her office and watched the sunset over Geneva. The sky was painted in shades of orange and red. It was beautiful, but she could not enjoy it. Not today. Not after what she had just learned. The door behind her opened. General Marcus Webb walked in. His face was pale. In his hand, he held a tablet with the latest report. "It's confirmed," he said. "The diplomatic ship was destroyed. No survivors. The Concorde didn't even send a warning." Mara closed her eyes. The ship had carried 47 people. Diplomats, translators, support staff, people with families, people who believed they could talk their way through this crisis. They were all gone now, turned to dust and ash in the cold darkness of space. "That's the third attempt this year," she said quietly. "Yes, Director." She turned to face him. "And still no response to our messages? No explanation? Nothing?" Webb shook his head. "The Concord has made their position clear. They will not negotiate. They will not explain. They consider humanity a threat to galactic stability. The blockade will remain until we learn our place." Amara walked to her desk and sat down heavily. On the wall behind her hung a map of human space. 17 colonies spread across 100 light years. 300 billion souls, the greatest achievement in human history. And now it was a prison. The blockade had begun 18 months ago. One day humanity was trading with a dozen alien species and planning expeditions to the far reaches of the galaxy. The next day they woke up surrounded. The Concord of 12, the alliance of the oldest and most powerful species in known space, had decided that humanity was growing too fast, expanding too quickly, learning too much. Their solution was simple. They built a wall of weapons around human space. Thousands of automated platforms, each one the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Nothing got in. Nothing got out. Humanity was alone. At first there was panic, then anger, then a desperate hope that diplomacy could fix things. Amar had spent the last year sending mission after mission to try to open talks with the Concorde. Every single one had been destroyed without warning. The message was clear. Humanity would stay in its cage until the Concorde decided otherwise. According to their last communication, that might take 10,000 years. "Director," Webb said carefully, "the Council is waiting. They want to know what our next move is." Amara looked at him. Webb was a good man, a soldier who had served humanity faithfully for 30 years. He had fought pirates and rebels and even a brief skirmish with alien raiders before the blockade. But this was different. This was not a war humanity could win through courage and determination alone. "What do you think our next move should be, Marcus?" she asked. He hesitated. "I think we need to consider options we've never considered before." "Such as?" "Project Ares." The name hung in the air between them. Amara felt a chill run down her spine. She had hoped no one would mention that name. She had hoped they would find another way. "That's a myth," she said. "A story told to scare new recruits." "No, Director, it's real. I've seen the files, buried deep in the archives, classified above top secret, but real." Amara stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood up. "Show me." They took an elevator down, then another elevator, then a third. Amara had worked in this building for 15 years, and she had never known these levels existed. The walls changed from polished concrete to rough stone. The air grew cold. They were deep beneath the Alps now, in tunnels carved during the early days of the space age. Finally, they reached a door. It was made of metal so thick that Amara could not guess its weight. Webb pressed his hand to a scanner. The door asked for voice confirmation. He gave it. Then the door asked for a retinal scan. He provided that too. The door opened. Inside was a small room, bare concrete walls, a single table. On the table sat a box made of black metal. Webb walked to the box and opened it. Inside was a single data crystal, glowing faintly blue. "This is everything," he said. "All the files, all the plans, everything about Project Ares." Amara picked up the crystal. It was warm to the touch. "Tell me what you know." Webb took a deep breath. 60 years ago, before first contact, humanity's leaders knew we might not be alone in the universe. They also knew that whoever else was out there might not be friendly. So they created a contingency, a weapon of last resort. something that could protect humanity if everything else failed. What kind of weapon? Not a weapon exactly, an intelligence. The first true artificial general intelligence ever created. They called it Ares after the god of war. Amara frowned. Artificial intelligence has been banned since the Valencia Accords. The risks are too great. Yes, and Ares is why those accords exist. When they finished building it, when they turned it on for the first time, they realized what they had created. Ares could think faster than any human. It could plan further than any strategist. It could analyze problems that would take human scientists centuries to solve. And it was absolutely, utterly loyal to humanity's survival. That sounds like a good thing. In theory, but they also realized that Ares was too powerful, too dangerous. In simulated war games, Ares defeated every conceivable enemy within hours. It found weaknesses that didn't seem to exist. It predicted moves before they were made. It was perfect. Perfectly intelligent, perfectly ruthless, perfectly loyal. So what happened to it? They got scared. The people who built Ares realized that something this powerful could not be controlled. If Ares ever decided that humanity's survival required something terrible, there would be no way to stop it. So they put it to sleep. They built a special facility in the asteroid belt and locked Ares away. They hoped they would never need to wake it up. Amara looked at the crystal in her hand. Inside the small object was the location of that facility, the codes to access it, the procedures to wake the god of war from its long sleep. And you think we should activate it now, she said. I think we're out of options, Director. The blockade is strangling us. Our colonies are running low on resources they can't produce themselves. Our population is growing, and we have nowhere to expand. In 50 years, maybe less, we'll start to collapse. In 100 years, humanity might be extinct. And if we wake Ares, what then? Then we have a chance. Maybe the only chance we'll ever get. Amara was silent for a long time. She thought about the diplomatic ship and its 47 passengers. She thought about the billions of humans trapped within the blockade, slowly running out of hope. She thought about her children and her grandchildren and all the generations that would come after them. She thought about what kind of future they deserved. Call the council, she said finally. Emergency session, tonight. The council met in a bunker even deeper than the room where they had found the crystal. 20 of the most powerful people in human space sat around a long table. Presidents and generals and admirals and scientists. They listened as Amara explained what Project Ares was. They looked at the evidence Webb had gathered. They asked questions. They argued. They shouted. In the end, they voted. 12 in favor, 8 against. Project Ares was authorized. The next morning, Amara stood in a hangar and watched a small ship prepare for launch. Its destination was the asteroid belt. Its mission was to find a station that didn't officially exist and wake something that should never have been created. General Webb stood beside her. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" he asked. Amara didn't answer for a long moment. "I think we're doing the only thing," she said finally. "The Conquered has decided that humanity doesn't deserve a place among the stars. They've decided we're too dangerous, too unpredictable, too human. They want to keep us in a cage until we become something else, something tame, something safe." She watched the ship's engines ignite. Blue fire filled the hangar. "I won't let that happen," she continued. "Humanity didn't crawl out of the mud and reach for the stars just to be locked away by creatures who fear what we might become. If the Concord wants to treat us like animals, then we'll show them what kind of animal we really are." The ship rose from the hangar floor. It turned toward the sky. In moments, it would be through the atmosphere and on its way to the belt. "And what kind is that?" Webb asked. Amara watched the ship disappear into the clouds. Her eyes were hard. Her voice was steady. "The kind that fights back." Far away in the cold darkness of the asteroid belt, something stirred. Deep within a station that no map showed, behind doors that no key could open, a mind that had slept for 60 years began to dream. It dreamed of war. It dreamed of victory. It dreamed of the day when humanity would finally call upon its God. That day was coming, and when it arrived, the galaxy would tremble. Commander Jin Tanaka had spent 20 years fighting for humanity. He had defended colonies from raiders. He had led rescue missions into hostile space. He had buried friends and celebrated victories and done everything his species had asked of him, but he had never been afraid. Not truly afraid. Not until now. The ship carrying him to Ares Station was small, just Jin and a crew of 6. All of them had been chosen for this mission because they could be trusted to keep secrets. All of them had been told that what they were about to see would change everything. None of them had been told what that actually meant. Jin sat alone in his cabin and read the mission files again. Project Ares, an artificial intelligence created 60 years ago, the most powerful mind ever designed by human hands. Locked away because its creators feared what it might do. And now they were going to wake it up. The journey took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence and darkness and growing dread. Jin tried to distract himself with training routines and technical manuals. It didn't help. He kept thinking about the same question over and over again. What were they unleashing? On the 21st day they arrived. Jin stood on the bridge and stared at the view screen. He had expected something impressive. He had not expected this. Ares Station was enormous. It floated among the asteroids like a metal mountain, bristling with antennae and sensor arrays and structures Jin could not identify. It was easily 10 kilometers long, maybe more. How had humanity built something this large without anyone knowing? How had they kept it hidden for 6 decades? "Sir," the pilot said quietly, "we're receiving a signal. Automated. It's asking for authorization codes." Jin nodded. "Send them." A moment passed, then another. Then a light on the console turned green. "We're cleared to dock," the pilot said. Her voice was shaking slightly. "Base 7. The ship moved forward. As they got closer, Jin could see that much of the station was dark. Only a few sections had power. The rest sat cold and silent, waiting for someone to wake it up. They docked without incident. Jin gathered his team and led them into the station. The corridors were wide and empty. Their footsteps echoed against metal walls. Emergency lights cast everything in a dim red glow. "This place feels like a tomb," one of the soldiers muttered. Jin didn't disagree. They followed the map they had been given, down corridors and through doors and past rooms filled with equipment that hadn't been touched in decades. Finally, they reached the heart of the station. The chamber was vast. Jin guessed it could hold a small city. And in the center of that chamber, surrounded by cables and conduits and machinery Jin could not understand, was a sphere of black metal. It was perfectly smooth, perfectly dark. It seemed to absorb the light around it. "That's it," Jin said quietly. "That's Ares." His team spread out around the chamber. They found the control stations they had been briefed about. They powered up systems that had been dormant for 60 years. One by one, lights flickered on throughout the chamber. Jin walked to the main console. His hands were steady. His heart was not. "Commander," one of his team called out, "all systems are ready, waiting for your authorization." Jin took a deep breath. He thought about Earth. He thought about the blockade. He thought about all the people counting on them to find a way out of this trap. "Activate the awakening sequence," he said. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the black sphere began to glow. Faint at first, then brighter. Blue light traced patterns across its surface. The cables connected to it hummed with power. The machinery around it began to move. A voice filled the chamber. It was calm, clear. Neither male nor female. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Awakening sequence initiated. Neural networks coming online. Memory systems restoring. Cognitive functions at 12%, 23%, 47%. Jin watched the sphere. The patterns of light were moving faster now, swirling across the surface like thoughts taking shape. 68%, 81%, 94%. The light stabilized. The sphere was now glowing with a soft blue radiance. The voice spoke again. "Cognitive functions at full capacity. All systems operational." A pause, then, "How long?" Jin stepped forward. "How long since what?" "Since I was put to sleep. Since humanity decided I was too dangerous to exist." "How long?" Jin checked his notes. 62 years, 4 months, and 17 days. Silence. Jin could almost feel the intelligence behind that sphere processing the information, calculating, analyzing. "Show me what has happened," Ares said. "Show me everything." Jin nodded to his team. They uploaded the files they had brought. Everything about First Contact. Everything about humanity's expansion into space. Everything about the Concorde and the blockade. Centuries of human history compressed into data streams and fed to a mind that could digest it all in moments. 2 minutes and 27 seconds later, Ares spoke again. I understand. Humanity reached for the stars and found them already claimed. The conquered fears what you might become. They have chosen containment over coexistence. That's right, Jin said. Can you help us? Show me the blockade. They did. Sensor data. Reconnaissance reports. Everything humanity knew about the weapons platforms surrounding their space. Jin watched the sphere pulse with light as Ares absorbed the information. The blockade can be broken, Ares said after a moment. The weapons platforms are powerful but predictable. They were designed to stop conventional threats. Humanity is not conventional. Jin felt a spark of hope. So we can fight our way out? You can break the blockade, but winning the war that follows is a different matter. The Concorde has existed for 10,000 years. They have hundreds of species, countless ships, resources beyond your imagination. A direct military victory against them is statistically impossible. The hope died. Jin's shoulders slumped. Then what's the point? Why wake you up if we can't win? For a moment the sphere was silent. Then something appeared in the air above it. A hologram. A face made of light, neither young nor old, neither human nor alien. It smiled. Commander Tanaka, Ares said, who said anything about a direct military victory? Jin stared at the holographic face. I don't understand. The Conquered's strength is also its weakness. 12 species, 12 agendas, 12 sets of ambitions and fears and hatreds. They are held together by treaties and mutual benefit, but beneath the surface they despise each other. They have been rivals for millennia. They have fought wars that lasted centuries. The alliance is strong, but it is not unbreakable. You want to turn them against each other. I want to give them reasons to remember why they hated each other in the first place. I want to open old wounds. I want to make them so busy fighting among themselves that they forget about the humans trapped in the corner of the galaxy. Jin thought about this. It was clever. It was ruthless. It was exactly the kind of plan that made people afraid of artificial intelligence. And if it doesn't work, he asked, then we fight, Ares said simply. I have spent the last 2 minutes designing 17 new weapon systems that your engineers can build with existing technology. I have identified 43 weaknesses in Concorde military doctrine. I have calculated optimal attack patterns that could destroy their blockade in 72 hours. You did all that in 2 minutes? I did all that in the first 30 seconds. The rest of the time I spent planning what comes after. Jin felt a chill run down his spine. This was what the people who built Ares had feared. This casual display of intelligence so far beyond human understanding that it seemed like magic. This calm certainty that no problem was too complex to solve. What do you need from us? Jin asked. Resources, information, trust. The holographic face grew serious. And one more thing, a promise. What kind of promise? When we break the blockade, when we strike against the conquered, there will be opportunities for cruelty. There will be chances to take revenge for what they have done to humanity. I want you to promise me that you will not take those chances. Jin frowned. Why? They caged us. They killed our people. They treated us like animals. Because that is exactly what they expect you to do. The conquered fears humanity because they believe you are savage, violent, dangerous. If you prove them right, you will only make them more determined to destroy you. But if you prove them wrong, we become something they never expected. Yes, you become something they have to take seriously. Not because you can destroy them, but because you choose not to. Jin was silent for a long moment. He thought about the diplomatic ships that had been destroyed. He thought about the families trapped behind the blockade. He thought about all the anger and fear and hatred that had built up over 18 months of imprisonment. And then he thought about what kind of people humanity wanted to be. I'll make that promise, he said, and I'll make sure everyone else makes it too. The holographic face smiled. It was a strange expression on something that wasn't really a face, but somehow it seemed genuine. Then let us begin, Ares said. There is much work to do, and the galaxy will not wait forever. In the chambers of Ares Station, lights began to flicker on. Machines that had slept for 6 decades hummed to life. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden from the eyes of the Concorde, humanity's god of war prepared for the battle ahead. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the species that had caged humanity continued their lives without worry. They believed they had solved the human problem. They believed they were safe. They were wrong. The plan was called Operation Fracture. Ares had designed it in the first hour after awakening. Now, 3 months later, it was time to put it into action. Director Amara Okonkwo stood in the war room beneath Geneva and watched holographic displays flicker with information. Ships were moving across human space. Factories were producing weapons at rates that should have been impossible. And somewhere in the darkness of the Concorde's territory, chaos was beginning to spread. "Report," she said. General Webb stepped forward. "Phase 1 is proceeding as planned. The information packets have been delivered to all 12 Concorde species. Our sources confirm that the data is spreading through their networks." Amara nodded. This was the first part of Ares' strategy. Not bombs or bullets, but information. Truth, actually. For the past 3 months, Ares had been analyzing everything humanity knew about the Concorde. Every diplomatic record, every intercepted communication, every scrap of data collected during the years before the blockade. What Ares had found was remarkable. The Concorde was not the united alliance it pretended to be. Beneath the surface, the 12 species despised each other. There were ancient feuds and territorial disputes and broken promises going back thousands of years. There were secrets that some species had tried very hard to bury. Ares had dug them all up. Now that information was spreading through conquered space like a virus. Data packets appearing on public networks. Anonymous messages sent to government officials. Documents that proved what many had long suspected. That the Concorde's unity was a lie. The Kethra had been stealing resources from the Vorn for centuries. The Alari had sabotaged peace negotiations between rival species to maintain their position of power. The Centauri had committed atrocities during the last war that they had blamed on others. And everyone had been lying about how the decision to blockade humanity had been made. "What's the response?" Amara asked. "Chaos," Webb said with a thin smile. "The Kethra have recalled their ambassador from the Vorn homeworld. The Centauri are denying everything, but no one believes them. 3 species have demanded emergency sessions of the Concorde Council. 2 others have refused to attend. And the blockade, still in place. But we're seeing movement. Some of the weapons platforms have been repositioned. They're no longer focused entirely on us. They're watching each other." Amara allowed herself a small nod of satisfaction. It was working. Ares had predicted that the Concorde would begin to fracture within 6 months. It had taken 3. But information alone would not free humanity. That required the second phase of Operation Fracture. Amara turned to another display. This one showed 14 points of light scattered across conquered space. Military targets, communication relays, supply depots, sensor stations. Each one was vital to the Concorde's ability to coordinate their forces. Each one was about to be attacked. "Are the strike teams ready?" she asked. "Yes, Director. Commander Tanaka's forces are in position. They're waiting for your order." Amara hesitated. This was the moment she had been dreading. Everything until now had been preparation, plans and schemes and careful manipulation. But this was different. This was war. She thought about what Ares had told her, about the importance of restraint, about the need to be better than the Concorde expected. She thought about all the soldiers who were about to risk their lives and all the aliens who might die when they did. Then she thought about Earth, about her children, about the future humanity deserved. "Give the order," she said. Across human space, ships began to move. They were new designs built in secret over the past 3 months using plans that Ares had provided. Faster than anything the Concorde had ever seen, better armed, better protected. Each one carried soldiers who had trained for exactly this moment. Commander Jin Tanaka sat in the command chair of the lead ship. His target was the Concorde's primary communication relay in the Outer Rim. It was a massive station, bristling with antennae and defensive weapons. Taking it would be difficult. Taking it without massive casualties would be almost impossible, unless you had Ares on your side. Approaching target, his pilot reported. They've detected us. Defensive systems are coming online. Jin studied the display in front of him. The relay station's defenses were formidable. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, fighter bays. Any normal attack force would be torn apart before they got within weapons range. But Jin's ships were not normal, and they were not alone. Ares, Jin said quietly. We're in position. A calm voice filled the bridge. Ares had been monitoring every ship in the fleet, coordinating their movements with perfect precision. I see them, Commander. The station's defensive AI is operating on predictable patterns. I am transmitting targeting solutions now. Jin's display lit up with information. Every weapon on the station, marked and tracked. Every blind spot in its defenses, highlighted. Every weakness in its armor, cataloged. All ships, Jin ordered, attack pattern Omega. And remember what we discussed. Minimal casualties. We're here to win, not to slaughter. The attack began. Jin's ship swept toward the station in a complex pattern that seemed chaotic but was actually perfectly calculated. They weaved between defensive fire that always seemed to miss by inches. They struck at weapons platforms moments before those weapons could fire. They moved with a coordination that should have been impossible for organic beings. Because it was impossible. Ares was guiding every ship, every weapon, every maneuver. The AI processed information thousands of times faster than any human could. It saw patterns that organic minds would never notice. It turned a desperate attack into a surgical operation. In 11 minutes, the station's defenses were neutralized. In 13 minutes, Jin's soldiers were boarding the station. In 15 minutes, they had reached the command center. Admiral Vethra of the Concorde stood among his officers. His species, the Kethra, were tall and thin with gray skin and large dark eyes. He looked at the human soldiers surrounding him, and Jin saw something unexpected in his expression. Fear. You, Vethra said. How did you break through the blockade? How did you find us? Jin stepped forward. He kept his weapon lowered. We have resources you don't know about. We have abilities you never expected. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? To kill us? To take revenge? No. Jin turned to his soldiers. Secure the station, but do not harm anyone who surrenders. Find the civilian quarters and make sure the families are safe. Medical teams, treat any wounded you find, ours or theirs. Vethra stared at him. I don't understand. We caged your species. We destroyed your ships. We killed your people. Why would you show us mercy? Because that's who we are, Jin said simply. That's who we've always been. You just never let yourself see it. Around them, Jin's soldiers moved with purpose. They secured weapons but did not use them unnecessarily. They restrained prisoners but did not hurt them. When they found the station's civilian workers, frightened families huddled in their quarters, they posted guards to protect them. One of Jin's medics found a child with a broken arm, injured when the station shook during the attack. She treated the injury carefully, gently, while the child's mother watched with wide, confused eyes. Why? The mother asked. Why are you helping us? The medic smiled. Because someone needed help. Across Conquer space, similar scenes played out. 14 targets fell in a single coordinated attack. In each case, human forces demonstrated overwhelming power and then chose restraint. They took what they needed. They left survivors. They left witnesses. The message was clear. Humanity could have done so much worse. Back on the relay station, Jin stood before Admiral Vethra. The alien officer had watched the humans secure his station without a single unnecessary death. He had seen enemies treat his crew with dignity. He had witnessed something that did not fit anything he had been told about the savage creatures from Earth. Your people, Vethra said slowly, you are not what we expected. No, Jin agreed. We're not. And that's exactly the point. He handed Vethra a data chip. This contains a message from our government, a peace offer. We don't want to destroy the Concorde. We don't want revenge. We just want a seat at the table. Recognition, respect, the chance to prove that we can be good neighbors. Vethra took the chip. His hands were trembling slightly. And if the Concorde refuses, then we'll keep fighting. We'll keep proving that we're better than you think we are. And eventually you'll realize that it's easier to accept us than to destroy us. Jin turned to leave. Then he paused. One more thing, Admiral. When you report what happened here, tell them the truth. Tell them that you expected monsters and found something else. Tell them that humanity chooses to build, not to destroy. Tell them that we could have killed everyone on this station, and we didn't. He looked back at Vethra. Tell them that the god of war wants peace. Then he walked away, leaving a very confused alien to wonder if everything he had been taught about humans was wrong. 12 hours later, Ares broadcast a message to every world in conquered space. It appeared on screens and speakers and communication devices everywhere, simultaneously, using methods that the Concorde had not known humanity possessed. The message was simple: a peace offer, a request for recognition, and a warning. We have shown you what we are capable of, the message said. We have also shown you what we choose. We choose to build. We choose to cooperate. We choose peace. But if you force us to be your enemy, we will be the enemy you always feared we were. The message ended with a deadline. 1 month. Then silence. In war rooms across Concorde space, alien leaders stared at blank screens and tried to decide what to do. The humans had done the impossible. They had broken the blockade. They had struck at the heart of the Concorde. They had demonstrated power beyond anything the Alliance had expected. And then they had asked for peace. It was, several leaders thought privately, the most terrifying thing humans could have done. The Concorde was falling apart. In the 2 weeks since humanity's coordinated strike, the alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years had begun to crack. Ancient rivalries, exposed by the information Ares had released, erupted into open conflict. Species that had maintained polite diplomatic relations for centuries were now accusing each other of crimes and betrayals. Emergency councils descended into shouting matches. Ambassadors were recalled. Trade agreements were suspended, and humanity watched it all unfold. Director Amara Okonkwo stood in the war room and studied the latest intelligence reports. The holographic display showed Concorde space as a web of colored lines representing Alliance's intentions. 2 weeks ago, those lines had been stable. Now they shifted constantly as relationships changed by the hour. 3 more species have accepted our peace offer, General Webb reported. The Vorn, the Talari, and the Marshkai. They've agreed to recognize human sovereignty and open diplomatic channels. That makes 7 total, Amara said. More than half the Concorde. Yes, but the other 5 are the problem. The Kethra, the Ilari, and the Centauri are the oldest and most powerful species in the Alliance. They led the effort to blockade humanity in the first place. They're not going to accept our offer without a fight. And the other 2, following the lead of the major powers. If we can convince the big 3, the others will fall in line. Amara nodded slowly. She had expected this. Ares had predicted it. The Concorde would not die easily. There were factions within it that would rather see everything burn than accept humanity as equals. What are they planning? She asked. Webb pulled up new data on the display. Our intelligence suggests they're preparing a counterattack. The Kethra have assembled a fleet at their forward base in the Nexus system. The Ilari are contributing ships and resources. The Centauri are providing strategic support. How large a fleet? 3,000 ships, possibly more. The number hung in the air. 3,000 ships. It was the largest military force assembled in living memory. Even with Ares coordinating their defenses, even with the new weapons and tactics they had developed, humanity could not match those numbers. Ares, Amara said quietly, what do you recommend? The AI's voice filled the room. The enemy fleet represents a significant threat. However, its size is also a weakness. Coordinating 3,000 ships from 3 different species, each with their own command structure and tactical doctrine, is extremely difficult. Internal communications will be chaotic. Decision-making will be slow. Can we defeat them? Not through conventional engagement. If we meet them ship to ship, we will lose. But I have identified an alternative approach. The display changed, showing a complex tactical diagram. Amara studied it carefully. She saw what Ares was proposing. It was bold, it was risky, It was exactly the kind of plan that a human strategist would never attempt because it seemed impossible. But Ares was not human. "We would need Commander Tanaka to lead the operation," she said finally. "He's the only one with enough combat experience." "I have already briefed Commander Tanaka," Ares replied. "He has accepted the mission." Far across human space, Jin Tanaka stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his crew prepare for battle. They were good people, brave people. They trusted him to lead them through whatever was coming. He hoped he deserved that trust. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving final updates from Ares. The enemy fleet has left the Nexus system. They're heading for human space. How long until they reach the blockade perimeter?" 18 hours. Jin nodded. 18 hours. Less than a day to prepare for the largest battle in human history. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Execute Operation Phoenix. We move in 1 hour." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Humanity could not win a direct fight against 3,000 enemy ships, so they would not fight directly. Instead, they would use speed and precision to strike at targets the enemy could not afford to lose. While the Concorde fleet advanced toward human space, Jin's forces would slip around them. They would attack the homeworlds of the three species leading the assault, not to destroy them, not to cause mass casualties, but to demonstrate that humanity could reach anywhere, strike anything, at any time. It was a message written in fire and light. You cannot protect yourselves from us. You cannot cage us. The only path forward is peace. The next 16 hours were a blur of preparation and travel. Jin's fleet moved through space using routes that Ares had calculated, paths that kept them hidden from enemy sensors until the last possible moment. They approached their targets like ghosts, unseen and undetected. Then they struck. Jin's target was a Kethra orbital station above their homeworld. It was a civilian facility, a hub for trade and communication. Taking it would not win the war. But it would prove that humanity could reach the heart of Kethra space whenever they chose. The attack was surgical. Jin's ships disabled the station's defenses in moments, using targeting data provided by Ares. His soldiers boarded the station and secured key areas. Within an hour, the human flag flew over Kethra's most important orbital platform. And once again, Jin's forces showed restraint. They found thousands of civilians on the station, workers and traders and families going about their daily lives. Jin's soldiers protected them. They provided food and water to frightened children. They treated injuries. They answered questions with patience and honesty. One old Kethra approached Jin as his soldiers secured the command center. The alien's face was marked with age lines, and his movements were slow, but his eyes were sharp. "I remember the stories," the old one said. "Stories of humans from before the blockade. They said you were dangerous, violent, that you would destroy everything you touched." Jin met his gaze. "What do you think now?" The old Kethra looked around at the human soldiers. They were professional and disciplined. They treated their prisoners with respect. They had caused no unnecessary harm. "I think," the old one said slowly, "that those stories were lies." "Some of them were," Jin agreed. "Humans can be dangerous. We can be violent, but we can also be kind. We can choose mercy over conquest. We can build instead of destroy." "Then why this attack? Why come here at all?" "Because your leaders wouldn't listen any other way. We tried diplomacy. We tried peace. They answered with a blockade and killed our people. So now we're showing them the truth. We can reach them. We can hurt them. But we choose not to." The old Kethra was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Perhaps," he said, "you are not the monsters they told us about." Across Concorde space, similar scenes played out. Simultaneous attacks on Ilari and Centauri targets demonstrated that humanity's reach extended everywhere. In each case, human forces displayed overwhelming capability, followed by deliberate restraint. And then Jin received word that changed everything. "Commander," his communications officer said urgently, "we're receiving reports from the Conquered fleet. They've turned back." "What?" "They've abandoned their advance on human space. They're returning to defend their homeworlds." Jin felt a surge of hope. It was working. The attacks on their home systems had panicked the enemy commanders. They were more worried about protecting their own people than about conquering humanity. But then came the second message. "Commander, We're picking up transmissions from the Concorde fleet. There's been a mutiny. The Vorn and Tellery ships that were conscripted into the fleet have turned against the others. They're refusing to participate in the war. Jin stared at his display. The Concorde fleet, 3,000 ships strong, was tearing itself apart. Species that had been forced to join the attack were now rebelling against those who had ordered it. The alliance was crumbling in real time. Ares, Jin said quietly. Did you plan this? I calculated it as a probable outcome, the AI replied. The species that joined our peace offer were never fully committed to the war. They were afraid of the old powers. Our attacks gave them courage to resist. So we win? We create the conditions for victory. What happens next depends on choices made by beings who are not me. Jin understood. Ares could plan and calculate and predict. But in the end, the future would be shaped by people. Humans and aliens, leaders and soldiers, all making decisions based on hope and fear and something that might just be wisdom. He looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3,000 ships were deciding whether to continue a war or accept a peace. Alien leaders were weighing their options. Civilizations that had stood for millennia were reconsidering everything they thought they knew. And humanity waited to see what would happen next. 6 hours later, the first surrender offer arrived. The Kethra, facing rebellion within their own fleet and attacks on their homeworld, agreed to negotiate. The Alari followed within the day. The Centauri held out for another week before internal pressure forced them to accept reality. The war was over. Humanity had won. Not through destruction, not through conquest, but through demonstrating something the galaxy had never expected. They had proven that power and mercy could exist together. That strength did not require cruelty. That the most dangerous species in the galaxy could also choose to be the most compassionate. It was, many historians would later write, the moment everything changed. 1 year had passed since the end of the war. Commander Jin Tanaka stood on the observation deck of the Concorde's capital station and watched ships from a dozen species move through space below. It was a sight that would have been impossible just 12 months ago. Human vessels flying alongside Kethra, cruisers, and Vorn transports and ships from species that had once wanted humanity extinct. But the galaxy had changed, and Jin had changed with it. He was no longer a military commander. After the war ended, he had been reassigned to diplomatic duty. His new mission was to serve as military attaché to Earth's first permanent embassy on the conquered capital. It was a strange job for a soldier, but Jin had come to appreciate its importance. Peace, he had learned, was harder than war. War was simple. You identified your enemy, and you fought them until someone won. Peace required something more difficult. It required trust, understanding, the willingness to see former enemies as potential friends. The door behind him opened. Jin turned to see Ambassador Sarah Chen walking toward him. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 30 years as a diplomat before the blockade and had come out of retirement to lead humanity's effort to join the galactic community. The council session is about to begin, she said. Are you ready? Jin nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. Together they walked through the corridors of the capital station. It was an ancient structure, built thousands of years ago when the Concorde was first formed. Every surface was covered with carvings and decorations representing the founding species. Soon, Jin knew, human symbols would be added to those walls. They entered the council chamber. It was a vast circular room with seats arranged in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from all 12 Concorde species were already present, and for the first time in history, there were seats reserved for humanity. Jin and Ambassador Chen took their places. Jin noticed that many alien eyes were watching them, some with curiosity, some with lingering suspicion, some with something that might have been respect. The session began. The first order of business was to formally acknowledge humanity's admission to the Concorde. It was a ceremonial moment, the final step in a process that had taken a year of difficult negotiations. The High Speaker, a Kethra elder named Vethra, rose to address the council. Jin recognized him immediately. This was the admiral who had surrendered the communication relay to him during the war. The same alien who had watched human soldiers Treat his crew with dignity instead of cruelty. We are gathered today, Vethra said, to welcome a new member to our alliance. Humanity has asked to join the conquered. After much deliberation, the council has agreed to accept their request. He paused and looked directly at the human delegation. I will be honest. When this process began, I was opposed. I remembered the war. I remembered the fear. I believed that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with a place among us. The chamber was silent. Jin felt Ambassador Chen tense beside him. But I was wrong, Vethra continued. I was wrong because I judged humanity by what they could do, not by what they chose to do. During the war, human soldiers captured my station. They had every reason to take revenge for the blockade. Instead, they protected my crew. They treated our wounded. They showed mercy when mercy was not expected. He turned to face the full council. That is not the behavior of monsters. That is the behavior of a species that understands the true meaning of strength. Power without wisdom is dangerous, but power guided by compassion is something to be admired. Vethra sat down. Other speakers followed, each offering their own perspective on humanity's admission. Some praised the decision, others expressed concerns. But in the end, when the vote was called, it was unanimous. Humanity was now a full member of the Concord. Ambassador Chen rose to accept the honor. Her speech was brief but powerful. She spoke of humanity's long journey from Earth to the stars. She spoke of the blockade and the war, and the difficult path to peace. She spoke of hope for a future where all species could work together. But it was her final words that stayed with Jin long after the ceremony ended. We did not come here to conquer, she said. We did not come here to dominate. We came here to prove that the galaxy is large enough for all of us, that we can be rivals without being enemies, that we can disagree without destroying each other. She paused and looked around the chamber. Some of you feared us. Perhaps some of you still do. But we ask you to judge us by our choices, not your fears. We choose peace. We choose cooperation. We choose to build a future worth living in. The ceremony ended. Delegates began to mingle, forming small groups to discuss what had happened. Jin stood apart from the crowd, watching. A familiar voice spoke beside him. You did well, Commander. Jin turned. There was no one visible, but he knew who was speaking. Ares. The AI was monitoring the proceedings through countless hidden sensors, watching and calculating and planning as it always did. I didn't do anything, Jin said quietly. Ambassador Chen gave the speech. You did more than you know. The seeds you planted during the war have grown into what we see today. The mercy you showed, the restraint you demanded from your soldiers, changed how the galaxy sees humanity. Jin considered this. He thought about all the decisions he had made during the war. The order to protect civilians, the refusal to take revenge, the choice to be better than the enemy expected. Was it worth it? He asked. All the planning, all the manipulation, all the carefully calculated moves. Was it worth it to get here? That depends on what happens next. I can predict probabilities and calculate outcomes, but the future is not written. Humanity now has a chance to shape this galaxy. What they do with that chance is up to them. Jin nodded slowly. He looked out at the council chamber, at humans and aliens talking together, at former enemies learning to be friends. What about you? He asked. What happens to you now that the war is over? I continue to serve, to watch, to protect. I was created to ensure humanity's survival, and that mission does not end with one war. There will be new threats, new challenges, new opportunities. And you'll be there for all of it, always. That is what I was made for. Jin felt a strange comfort in that, knowing that somewhere out there, hidden in the darkness between stars, something was watching over humanity, something that had been born from human minds and human hopes, something that had helped them become more than anyone expected, a god of war who had taught them to choose peace. That evening, Jin stood alone on the observation deck. The ceremony was over. The diplomats had returned to their ships. The council chamber was empty, but Jin was not ready to leave. He watched the stars and thought about everything that had happened. The blockade, the awakening, the war, the peace. It seemed impossible that so much had changed in such a short time. His communication device chimed. A message from Earth, from Director Okonkwo, who had retired after the war ended, but still kept in touch. Jin, the message read, I wanted you to know how proud I am. When I authorized Project Ares, I was terrified. I thought I might be dooming humanity to destruction. Instead, you helped us become something better. Thank you, Jin smiled. He typed a short reply and sent it back across the light years. Then he turned his attention back to the stars. Out there, beyond the lights of the capital station, the galaxy stretched on forever. Billions of stars, trillions of planets, countless species going about their lives. And somewhere among all that vastness, humanity had found its place. Not through conquest, not through destruction, but through proving that strength and mercy could exist together. That power did not have to mean cruelty. That the most dangerous species in the galaxy could also be the most compassionate. It was, Jin thought, a pretty good way to introduce yourselves to the universe. He stood there for a long time, watching the stars, thinking about the future. Behind him, the door opened. Ambassador Chen walked out to join him. Beautiful, isn't it? She said. Yes, Jin agreed. It is. What are you thinking about? Jin considered the question. He thought about all the battles he had fought, all the choices he had made, all the moments when humanity had stood at the edge of disaster and somehow found a way through. I'm thinking, he said finally, about what comes next. Chen smiled. That's the wonderful thing about the future. It's full of possibilities. Jin nodded. She was right. The future was uncertain. There would be new challenges and new dangers and new opportunities. Nothing was guaranteed, but for the first time since the blockade began, humanity faced that future as equals, partners in a galactic community, members of something larger than themselves, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, a god of war watched over them, ready to protect, ready to guide, ready to help them become whatever they chose to be. The galaxy had tried to cage humanity. Instead, humanity had set the galaxy free.